Well, a very special good afternoon, good evening to each and every one of you, and thank you, friends, for tuning in to West Indian Today, reaching out to the South Asian and the Indo-Caribbean community, and that is what we have been doing so for the last 4 decades. We want to say thank you to each and every one of you for tuning into our program, for sending us your thoughts, your suggestions, and as always, your love as well. It is indeed an honor and a privilege. Now, friends, over the last few weeks, and I would say over the last 2 months, we've been in conversation with lots of candidates running for various offices. For example, as I said, that this is a time in which every form of local government, there are candidates seeking a seat in local government, be it for city council, be it for the mayor's office and whatnot. So in the past few weeks, we've been joined by a few individuals who expressed their interest in running for the mayor's office. But today I am going to be welcoming a very special individual who could be the difference maker. In fact, this person is the difference maker in this race for the mayor's office in 2017. And ladies and gentlemen, joining with me is the Republican candidate for mayor's office, none other than Miss Nicole Malliotakis. I want to say a very special welcome to you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Thank you so much. Remember, friends, that as I always say, that these programs that we bring to you is neither to endorse nor to support a particular candidate or party, but it is to give a candidate a forum so that they can relate the message to you, the viewers, who are also voters as well, to make that decision on election day. Once again, Ms. Malliotakis, I want to say thank you to you. So first opportunity goes to you. You can give us an introduction about yourself. I mean, you're a New York State Assembly woman, and you're also a product of immigrant parents. So I think that actually is another difference maker in this race. But first opportunity goes to you.
Well, I want to thank you very much for having me here. I am a New York State Assembly member, as you mentioned. I've been representing Staten Island and Brooklyn. This is now my 7th year in Albany. And it's been very wonderful to represent the people of my district. And certainly part of my platform has been improving transportation, fighting against taxes, making sure that we have the bus service that we need, the education opportunities for our children. And so those have been, I think, some of the hallmarks of my time in the Assembly. However, now I'm seeking to run for mayor because I've spent a lot of time in the Assembly as a member of the minority party pushing back against a lot of bad pieces of legislation that doesn't respect the taxpayer. And I see that same type of policies coming into City Hall. So I want to be more proactive in being able to push an agenda that will help people of New York City, especially those hardworking taxpayers that I feel are not respected under this administration. We have seen a tremendous deterioration of the quality of life under Bill de Blasio. These are things that people experience each and every day, whether it be the transportation nightmares that we're seeing on the subway system, in which he has a responsibility as somebody who has 4 appointees to the board and also responsibility to put money towards a capital plan for upgrades. He's simply pointing the fingers at the governor and saying it's his fault. He's not taking any leadership. We see a homeless crisis that has skyrocketed here in the city of New York. 20% increase in homeless population. You walk in the city of New York and you see fellow New Yorkers sleeping on the street. And we have a mayor who's not being proactive about giving these individuals the resources that they need and trying to rotate people out of the shelter system, giving them opportunity to provide for themselves and their family. I think that's another big issue that has to be discussed, and his solution is to put 90 homeless shelters throughout the city, perhaps in your neighborhood, perhaps in my community. But the reality is that we should be looking to get people out of the homeless shelter. It's supposed to be temporary, and we're not doing that under this administration as we did under the previous administration with Michael Bloomberg. With education, you're seeing a tremendous amount of money being spent. He has a renewal schools program that pumps hundreds of millions of dollars into some of the failing schools in our city, and yet we're not getting results. There's a tremendous amount of bureaucracy at the top of the level of the Department of Education. That central administration bureaucracy is just sucking out all the money, and we're not seeing the money trickle down to the students, to the teachers who have to pay for their own supplies.
Correct.
It is really outrageous. In parts of Queens, the borough which we're in right now, they have children still being taught in trailers. And so it's really an issue, I think, that needs to be addressed by spending money more properly and efficiently. We give $9 billion a year to the city of New York from the state to pay for education. We spend more per pupil than any other state in the nation. We spend more per pupil than any other city in the nation. Right. Yet, as I've mentioned, that money doesn't seem to be getting to the children. What we do see, though, are lucrative contracts for consultants, $40 million being spent for high-priced consultants, that relationship with the current chancellor. It's time that we make sure that money's trickling down to the classroom. And of course, traffic. tremendous amount of traffic congestion across the city of New York. Some of his Vision Zero policies have crippled the boroughs by lowering the speed limits, where it's become a gridlock. Not investing in smart technology like smart lights to ease the traffic flow. And we have rideshare services, which I support, Uber, and I love using Uber. But the issue is that they're not regulated, and you have 50,000 additional vehicles on the streets of the city of New York without any type of cap or regulation or control. And so we have seen a tremendous increase in traffic congestion across the 5 boroughs. And I'm recognizing this. I mean, we always thought in Staten Island and Bay Ridge we had bad traffic nightmares, but now that I'm traveling all across the city, I see it's everywhere. It's in the Bronx, it's in Queens, certainly Manhattan, and so this is something that we need to address. And one of the things we do that is by improving the transportation, public transportation, improving the signals, the subway signals, which is one of the things. If I was mayor, I would be saying I'm going to put money towards this capital project because it's critical. It is those subway signals are pre-World War II condition. They are decades beyond. Decades beyond their lifespan.
Right.
And our mayor, again, should be investing more in that capital plan and saying, this is my city, this subway system runs through my entire city. It is critical for economic opportunities, for people to get around and reduce congestion and traffic, to invest and upgrade these signals to deal with economic growth and population growth. And that needs to be a priority, as well as adding more ferry service on the furthest points of our boroughs.
Correct.
So the northern part of the Bronx, the eastern part of Queens, and of course the southern part of Staten Island, where I'm from.
Well, wonderful. So here you said quite a lot there, and of course, you did speak about transportation. In fact, that's the first thing I'm going to come to. When I first met you, I think that was at the time when I met you at an event where you were speaking. About 5 subway lines were down: the E, the F, the R, the M. All those subway, there was no service running. You did speak about the derailments, and also about the issue with transportation. But you mentioned about lowering the speed limit. Now, here's one thing: if you are elected mayor, one thing that I think the citizens or the residents of New York would ask, that if you raise the speed limit, would that cause more accidents? Would that cause more fatalities? Also, in terms of traffic on the highway, how do we look to lessen the traffic? Do we expand the lanes? And also, how do we improve the bus system and trains as well?
Well, with the speed limit, I'm not looking to increase the speed limit, but I'm in certain areas, though, where you have 3-4 lanes or major boulevards, you can't have the speed limit at 25 miles per hour like you do in some places. I ride my bicycle 25 miles per hour. That's not going to get you far, and I think that is backed up, at least the community where I'm from, where we have some either boulevards and some sections that are 25 miles per hour. It has certainly slowed down traffic so much that people now are concerned, also because of the speed cameras that have been placed up. There's a lot of, I think, gridlock that is occurring because that needs to be reevaluated, the entire system. In terms of the bus lane, we have bus lane cameras as well. What I find is the bus lanes go into effect right when rush hour from school, when school's dismissed, and that has caused a tremendous amount of gridlock, taking away an entire lane during that period. When there's not really people commuting home from work in Manhattan, it's not really rush hour, which usually starts around 5 o'clock at least, 4 or 5 o'clock. However, what we're seeing is it taking effect right at the dismissal of school time. So you have a lane being taken away right when there's more cars on the street because people are picking up their children, and that's creating a tremendous amount of gridlock in communities as well. So I think some of these things need to be adjusted and tweaked.
All right.
And there's some components that are good, but also about pedestrian safety. I mean, we should be able to get stop signs in front of our schools. The 2 schools closest to where I live do not have stop signs, always stop signs in front of it. So if speed cameras are about pedestrian safety and not revenue, then why are we not focusing on a simple solution like having a stop sign in front of your school where elementary school children are crossing? That would make sense to me, and I think that's something we need to evaluate as a city as well.
No, that is indeed a very powerful statement, and of course that's something that is worth being taken into consideration. I do hope that, and I'm sure that once elected mayor, that's one of the first things that you do. Now, you're speaking about housing, the housing situation. Now, in the last 4 years, actually, I would say maybe a little bit more, but within the last 4 years, we've seen the highest foreclosure in New York City. You also spoke about homeless shelters. Actually, more and more people are actually actually, if they're not in a homeless shelter, they're sleeping in a street corner because the homeless shelters can't really house people. And also, too, rent has gone up for a lot of tenants. Now, if elected mayor, how do you make housing affordable?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to look at the cost of living in this city.
Correct.
And why is the cost of living so high? It is so high because the people at City Hall are passing regulations and policies that increase the cost of living, whether it be more taxes, for example. Property taxes, water bills, all have gone up double digits since this mayor has taken office. And as a matter of fact, the property tax levy, which is the pot of money that they then divvy up by the 4 classes of the property taxes, has gone up over 30%.
Correct.
30%, think about that. So
That's
they're
true.
looking to get 30% more money from property taxes, from you, from me, from all the homeowners here in the city of New York. That is an issue of spending. And the way that this mayor has spent money, increasing spending by nearly a quarter the budget in 3.5 years. And he's going back to the property tax. So that has increased the burden on landlords, it's increased the burden on homeowners. Many seniors are being priced out because they can't afford, now they're retired, they're on fixed incomes, they can't afford their property tax bill every year. We have young people of my generation that I had gone to high school with have left. They've decided to start their families in other states where it's more affordable to buy their first home.
Correct.
So that's the stem of property taxes. Then there's the issue of affordability and providing jobs where people can make a living to support themselves and their family. Now, with the homeless crisis, there's multiple things that could be the cause. It could be, for instance, mental issues. It could be substance abuse. It could be domestic violence. And then it could be an issue of an individual who was working on minimum wage and could not afford their rent anymore because they just weren't making enough money. That's where I believe we should be investing in programs to address those underlying issues. With the issue of being able to afford to live in New York City, my answer is to try to get people off of minimum wage and try to get them vocational training so they have a skill, so that way they can support themselves and their families and provide a better life and be part of this community. I feel that we're not doing that, and there's so much argument over increasing the minimum wage, but really the reality is how do we get people off of minimum wage? Minimum wage is supposed to be for entry level. You know, it's supposed to be for retired people that are just looking for something to do. It's not supposed to be to support a family.
Correct, exactly.
And the problem is that what I want to do is see people get off of minimum wage. So if they're homeless in the shelter system, we need to be proactive about getting them out of the shelter, right? And it's supposed to be temporary as shelter if you are having a difficulty or an issue that needs to be addressed, an underlying issue. But in the case of somebody who has been priced because they just can't afford to pay their rent, we should be looking to give them education opportunities. I was just at the Pan Am Hotel where the community of Elmhurst, Queens is protesting because they are looking to extend the contract, which is an illegal contract, by the way, because shelters, they're supposed to have kitchens in each room for the families. They don't have that situation there, and they're spending $26 million a year of taxpayer money to provide this shelter for families. And think about what you could do with that money to change people's lives. Right. And instead, they are spending nearly almost $500,000 a night, one night across the city of New York to house people in hotels. You know, some of the hotels over $200 a night. It's $400 a night in some cases. I mean, it's really outrageous how much money the mayor is spending because he's not being proactive about addressing the underlying issue and trying to help individuals support themselves and their families and giving them a skill to do that. So that I think is something that we have seen change from when Bloomberg left to now. And that I think is why there's such a sharp increase that we have seen in the homeless population.
Now, here is a few things that, one of the things I want to talk about is cutting needless spending. So in what areas would you cut needless spending, actually wasteful spending, to put money back into fixing the communities, fixing roads, and also improving failing schools? Well,
so this is the issue. Instead of focusing on those basic services that the mayor and the city of New York are supposed to provide, like making sure our schools are better so every child gets an education, making sure that our trains are running properly, making sure that the traffic is flowing, that the homeless are being taken care of. instead of addressing those basic issues, which is what their job is to do, they have spent money on all sorts of things. So, one of the biggest reasons for the increase in spending is because the mayor has decided to grow government, add more bureaucracy, add tens of thousands of workers to the city workforce, which in some cases not all bad. There were a couple thousand that were teachers or police officers or firefighters. That's one thing. But when you're adding to bureaucracy
Correct.
and just adding more, people that are at very high salaries, he has doubled the number of special assistants that he has at City Hall to 264 people. Think about that. How come he needs twice as many special assistants that Mayor Bloomberg had? It is a complete disregard for the taxpayers who work every day in this city, make the city run, and then pay taxes on April 15th to be not using their money so unwisely. That's one example. You saw the other day what happened. $27 million in the budget for legal defense for illegal immigrants who have committed crimes, even murder and rape, from deportation. That is outrageous. It's another part of spending that we're seeing that is not, just again, a disregard. They act as if money grows on trees. And as I mentioned to you, the property tax levy, which is what the city can raise, all taxes need to go through Albany, and they have to be approved from Albany in order to be raised.
Right.
Except for the property tax. They can increase the levy, which means we're going to take whatever amount we're taking from property taxes this year, we can increase it next year and increase it the following year. This year they're increasing at 7%. So since he has taken office, the amount of money that they're using or taking from the people in property taxes has increased 30%.
Correct, exactly.
So that's why the affordability issue comes into place. That's why the rents are going up. That's the reason for all these things that we're seeing and why people are being priced out of the city of New York, is because there's not a cap on spending. I proposed a cap on spending. In Albany, we have put a 2% cap on spending on the budget, the state budget under Governor Cuomo. I believe that we should be doing the same thing in the city of New York.
Exactly, and and very wonderfully put. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, another issue, when you also spoke about, like illegal immigrants who's committed murders and, all other crimes as well, that actually another question just came to mind. Earlier in the year, I would say in January, there were several individuals who posed as ICE agents, went into Richmond Hill, and they harassed people of the Indo-Caribbean community. Now, here's the thing. If that issue were to occur under your tenure, under your regime as mayor, what do you do against, people who pose as ICE agents, basically harassing innocent citizens? And also another thing too is that what do we do about crime? When we think about it too is that in the last few years, there's been officers such as Officer Brian Moore, a fatality, who was a fatality of a defender. Also Officer Randolph Holder, a proud native of Guyana who served in law enforcement. Yeah. So what do we do in terms of reducing crime?
Well, also you had a couple of questions there in one. Well, to start off, to talk about the sanctuary city policy. All mayors, going back to Ed Koch, have had a policy in the city in which if an individual is here and they are reporting a crime, for instance, to the NYPD or any city agency, they are not questioned of their immigration status. I support that policy. I think we should continue that policy. What I do not support is the policy of Mayor Bill de Blasio, which now says individuals who commit crimes, including sexual abuse, forcible touching, grand larceny, patronizing a child for prostitution, identity theft, welfare fraud, drunk driving, that we're not going to comply with detainee requests to have them removed from the country. I think that's something that needs to be important. It's an important differentiation we need to make, and that is what my belief is, that those crimes are serious too. He says they're not serious. I don't know how somebody could say that patronizing a child for prostitution or grand larceny or sex abuse is not a serious enough crime to cooperate with federal authorities. So that I think is something that needs to be told to the people of New York City, because there's a difference. It's not about harassing people who are here or hardworking. I'm the daughter of immigrants. I understand the aspirations of the American dream. I understand what a sacrifice it is to come to this country and work multiple jobs to have a better life for you and your family. But we're not going to tolerate people who are here and are committing crimes against other immigrants and citizens. Now, with regards to the police officers you mentioned, Specifically, I want to talk about Police Officer Randolph Holder.
Correct.
Because I am the sponsor. I wrote the bill, Police Officer Randolph Holder law, which we've been trying to pass in Albany, which would close the loophole which allowed his murderer to escape from jail sentencing and put him on the street to be able to kill the police officer to begin with. This is a law that I think is very important, also that goes along with our heroin epidemic that we're facing in our city and across the nation. Right now, there's a loophole in the law that allows hardened criminals, these felony drug dealers with multiple felony convictions. So in this case, Tyrone Howard had 4 felony drug convictions. He had 24 prior arrests. He was selling the worst narcotics outside one of our housing projects in Harlem. He was arrested. The judge sent him to drug treatment, and he put him in a drug treatment as a sentence with individuals who have committed a first-time misdemeanor because they're feeding their habit. They're committing the crimes to feed their habit. And he shouldn't have been there. He should have been in jail because he was selling drugs multiple times, multiple felonies. He was selling the worst narcotics, poisoning our children. We cannot mix the two. So hardened criminals who have multiple felony drug convictions should not be put into treatment with people who have first-time offenders that commit misdemeanors to feed their habit. I mean, unless you're trying to get them new clients, it really doesn't make any sense.
Right, okay.
This was a loophole for him to not go to jail. He went to treatment. He never actually showed up for the treatment. He was back on the street. And that's when he encountered Police Officer Randolph Holder and murdered him.
Right.
So I've been fighting very hard to close that loophole. And a matter of fact, after Police Officer Holder's death, the mayor said, and Commissioner Bratton said, that this is a terrible loophole, flaw in the law, that it needed to be closed, that he's the last person that should be on the streets of the city of New York. And since then, which was October 2015, in which he was murdered, nobody has done anything to try to help me or Senator Marty Golden, the sponsors of the bill, try to make it law, to close that loophole so more innocent people don't get hurt by people who are hardened criminals. So that's one thing I think where the mayor he just spoke, at a press conference, and then he never followed through with advocating to change the law.
So my next question is, do you support the policy under former Mayor Rudy Giuliani of stop, question, and frisk for better policing? If you do, how do you basically explain to people that this is a policy not for racial profiling? That's what a lot of people feel, that it's a racial profile policy. If not, what is your policy in terms of better policing?
Well, look, I think that stop, question, frisk is a good policy to use when it's warranted, right. And it needs to be used, of course, in a limited way. When if someone is stopped and someone is being suspicious and they're questioning them and they have reason to believe that they may have either drugs or a weapon or they're out to harm someone, then frisk is appropriate. But it's not to be used to target individuals. I think there needs to be more open communication about the policy, when it's appropriate to use it, when it's not appropriate to use it, and that's how we move forward as a community to talk about it. Correct. But the reality is that we have a tremendous drug epidemic in the city of New York. We have issues with gun violence in the city of New York, and the only way we're going to get those drugs and guns off the street is, in many cases, using stop, question, frisk. So I think it's a tool that should be allowed to be used, but again, it's got to be limited in its use, and there's got to be maybe public service announcements so everyone understands when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. And now you have the cameras that the police officers are wearing, which protect both them and the individual if somebody's being stopped. So, I mean, there is now some safeguards in place, but I think that has to be something that is certainly a discussion that we could bring all the community stakeholders together and have a real dialogue about this issue.
So here's another question. Actually, I have a few more before we do sign off. Now, here's the thing. I mean, I'm in conversation with you, and your party, the party that you represent, believes in conservatives, actually in the idea of conservatism. Lots of my viewers, actually, who've come from Guyana, they've come from Trinidad. This has been something that has been passed from one tradition to another. That's somewhere along the line, someone said to them, when you come, vote for the party of the progressive or of the liberal, because they're the party that will work for you, the hardworking people. So what's your message to them? That if you are elected mayor, you're going to work to improve the quality of life for them, despite being, under the Republican ticket?
Yeah, I think that's actually very much a misconception. I think
Correct.
that people who are who are hardworking and pay taxes and know how painful it is to write that check to the government want to make sure that their money is being used appropriately and efficiently,
Right.
and that they're getting results for their money that they're paying. And I think that that's what we don't see from this mayor. And what we see from progressivism is that it's actually progressively worse. Everything's getting progressively worse. You know, again, the homeless crisis is increasing. The trains are a disaster. They're stopping 70,000 delays a month on the subway system in the city of New York. Traffic is a disaster. Nothing's happening. He believes now that public urination and littering should not be crimes anymore. So, I mean, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions on what is good policy and what is bad policy and who has the better plan. But what I can say is that I've always been an individual who's fought for the taxpayers. I've been an individual who respects the taxpayers' money. I have voted against taxes over 300 times. I am somebody who believes that we can reduce bureaucracy, that we can spend less money and still get better results, and not that we should be throwing more money at a problem, but if something's not working, that we should be taking that money and using it differently, using it more efficiently in a different capacity.
Correct,
Just
exactly.
if you keep spending money on programs and different things, and you're not getting results, that means those programs aren't working. So the answer is not to tax and spend more money. The answer is to look at the root cause and see what can you change or what can you do better so you're using your money more efficiently. And I think that's what conservatism is all about. It's about limited government, less bureaucracy, less red tape. Many of the individuals that you mentioned in our South Asian community are small business owners, and they deal with the red tape, they deal with the bureaucracy, they deal with the fines that they're getting at their businesses, they deal with the taxes that they got to pay every year. And again, I'm somebody who is a fighter for small business. I've been very proud to have endorsements of many business groups throughout my time in the New York State Assembly because I've been an advocate for them. Because I understand that that's what drives this economy. That's what creates jobs, is the small business community. We want to create environments where they can create a business, allow that business to grow, keep a little more of their money so they can reinvest in their business and expand, and that's how they create jobs in our community. And so as a daughter of immigrants who were also small business owners in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, I understand that, and I think that that's what I represent. That's what my party represents.
Friends, we want to say thank you to also Mr. Ravi Kumar. And remember, if there are any concerns or any questions that you have concerning what we discuss or anything from Ms. Malliotakis, do be sure to get in touch with me, imran@itvgold.com. If you want to opine, you can also get in touch with me there as well. My time with you is officially over, but we always have you on our minds. We definitely do have you on our minds, and we will see you again next week, same time, same place.